Okay. So in today's presentation, I'm going to explore what trust is. I'm going to look at some of the global trends in trust. I'm going to explain why we're talking about trust at a waste conference. I'll present some of the findings from our National Recycling Week research from last year, and then explore some of the psychological principles involved in building trust. So just quickly, Planet Ark is an environmental not-for-profit. We have a number of recycling and waste programs, and we work with communities, businesses, governments to help protect our planet's ability to thrive. So what is trust? Well, society wouldn't operate without trust. We wouldn't want to get into our cars if we didn't trust that other people would stay on their side of the road. We wouldn't buy our lunches if we didn't think that we wouldn't get sick from buying our lunches. It takes a long time to create, but a short time to destroy. So if we got food poisoning from that shop where you bought the lunch, you're probably not going to go back there anytime soon. So we can't verify, though, everything that we place our trust in. So we actually have social trust. And one of the psychological explanations for this is social contract theory. And this explains trust as a rational process. So for example, I put out my recycling, the council picks it up and it gets recycled, therefore I trust my council. What this theory doesn't take into account though is the emotional aspect. So when people are recycling, they're feeling good. It doesn't take into account when they feel a sense of betrayal, when they feel like their recycling is ending up in waste. Some other psychological explanations are the 4 dimensions of trust. And this is used by the Edelman Trust Barometer. It's a global bit of research done each year. So just quickly, it's about demonstrating that you have ability, and that can be an organisation or a person, that you have integrity and that you're honest and transparent, that you're dependable, you keep your promises, and that you have purpose and you're having a positive impact on consumers or society. So trust is forward-looking, and it's really important when a behaviour relies on what others do in the future, which is the case with recycling. So some of the global trends, to put it into context, the UN Secretary General is quoted as saying that trust is at breaking point, and that we're suffering from a bad case of trust deficit disorder in our governments and institutions. In Australia, trust in democracy has fallen off a cliff. So some research showed that in 2007, 86% trusted in our democracy, and that's fallen to 2018 at 41%. It's not surprising considering the revolving door of prime ministers. But this isn't just an Australian trend. In the US, for the past 40 years, there's been a downward trend in trust in government as well. So the Edelman Trust Barometer, it's a global survey that partners with leading academics in trust and reputation. It takes about 18 months for it to go through the whole process. It surveys about 33,000 participants, so it's a comprehensive bit of research. And it found in 2017 the largest ever drop in trust in our institutions of media, business, NGO and government. 2019, there were some interesting findings as well. We've had a big rise in the consumption and sharing of news. We're consuming and sharing a lot more news than we did in previous years. However, our trust in that media is still very low. There's a record gap between the informed, which are the people that are tertiary educated in the top quartile of income for their age and their country, and they consume business and public policy news regularly, and the rest of the population. So the informed have a much more higher level of trust than the general population. And Australia falls below the global average when it comes to trust in our institutions. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's probably good to have a little bit of cynicism. But how else can this trust decline be explained? So Rachel Botsman, who's an expert in collaborative consumption and trust, says that institutional trust in media and banks and our governments is being replaced by distributed trust, where we're trusting our friends, family, and even strangers. So how many of us have gotten into a car because of what an app on our phone told us to do? Hence the sharing and gig economy growth. This is a rolling piece of research that Pollinate does on trust in professionals. Unsurprisingly, politicians are way down the bottom, and there's actually a big gap between the next two professions of banking and journalism. At the top, we've got doctors, nurses, and scientists. So if you're looking for a champion for your campaigns, perhaps not go with a politician. This is something we're quite proud of. The Modium Group Living Low Hat survey from last year. This is a survey that began in 2007 and has surveyed over 50,000 Australians. It rated Planet Ark as the #1 most responsible, ethical and sustainable organisation, and that was unprompted, so there wasn't a list of answers. We beat some big global companies that have much bigger marketing budgets than we do. Companies like Tesla and even global environmental organisations like WWF. Why is this? Well, partly because people know us. They might not know everything we do, but they probably know us from either National Tree Day, the cartridges for Planet Ark box in their workplace, the endorsed cleaning products on supermarket shelves. But it also has to do with the way we communicate, and I'll show you some examples. So why talk about trust? So Stephen R. Covey sold a lot of books, and he said that trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication, and effective communication has probably never been more important in recycling and waste education. There's also an economic reason. The Edelman Trust Barometer did some research into US companies on the stock exchange over a 12-month period. And it found that those companies that had a high rating of trust had a 5% better return than the average for their sector. So trust helps an organisation make money. No doubt most of you saw the 60 Minutes show from a few weeks ago and have seen all these types of headlines in the last year or two. Again, this is going to create that sense of betrayal among viewers and a loss of empowerment and autonomy when people are trying to do the right thing. So for National Recycling Week 2018, we did some research to find out how much trust there was in recycling. Is this a picture of reality? Probably not, because it's a corny stock photo. But overwhelmingly, 91% of people agree that recycling is the right thing to do, which is great. And 2/3 of Australians are either extremely concerned or very concerned about the environment. So they want to do the right thing. So we asked, what do you think happens to your curbside recycling? Only 42%, under half, thought that most of it was recycled. So that means 58% are thinking it either goes to landfill, is stockpiled, or they're not even sure. We also asked them the question directly about trust in their curbside system. So there was 46% that said they had high trust. Again, that leaves 54% that have either zero or medium levels of trust. Let's break down the demographics a little bit. This is our big truck of stats. And it shows that old Australians generally have less trust in curbside recycling than younger. So there's potential there to target your waste communications at this audience. We had a look at it geographically as well to find out the differences. There's not that much difference between metro and regional. Regional is slightly less trust, potentially due to accessibility. Looking at the cities, Brisbane and Adelaide had higher trust than Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. South Australia and Adelaide, we know, they lead the way in recycling rates. They've had the CDS for decades, so there's a culture of recycling there. For Brisbane, it's one big city council with one set of guidelines for recycling, therefore they can streamline their messaging. Some other findings. We asked whether Australians would be willing to pay $1 or $2 to their council to help cover the cost of curbside recycling. And the majority of Australians are willing to pay a little bit extra. Even more willing were those that had environmental concern or were females. However, there's still 1/3 that are not willing at all to pay extra. We asked if they'd use a council-provided bin for food scraps if it was free, and yep, 82% said they would. For a small increase in rates still, it was still half that would be willing. Some other recycling programs, we've seen in the last 5 years that all these programs have had an increase in awareness. Some of the longer ones, like cartridges for Planet Ark and Mobile Muster, still increasing, which is great. And then some of the newer ones have had quite big increases as well. So how do you build trust? So we asked those that answered that they didn't have trust in the curbside system, what would build their trust? And councils should be happy to know that around half would want information from their councils. Just over 1/3 wanted a report from a waste and recycling expert, and just under 1/3 were happy to receive communications from NGOs. This is our even bigger truck of stats. So there's a lot of numbers there, so I'll just try and highlight a couple. You'll see that across the board, information from councils was the top answer. Where there's differences comes from the report from a waste and recycling expert, where it's kind of the older generations that would like to see that type of report, potentially because they have more time on their hands than the combined families with kids. And similarly, it's the empty nesters, where the families where the kids have left home are more likely to want communications from non-government organisations. So there's some opportunities there. Planet Ark actually produce free resources for National Recycling Week each year for council, as well as you might have heard previously, about the Australasian Recycling Label, as well as resources for cartridges for Planet Ark and business recycling as well. So how do you build trust? So one psychological theory is the 3 Cs. That means showing competence, showing character, and showing you care. So I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. So to demonstrate competence, you need to show knowledge. This is an example of a newsletter that we send out to people working in sustainability. And it's showing that we have evidence of knowledge, or at least an ability to communicate relevant information. You can also demonstrate rigour in logic, and this is an example from our research where we're showing how particular materials get processed step by step, and the tangible end products that they get made into. The second C is about demonstrating character, and you can do that by showing authenticity. This is an example of a tweet where we're acknowledging that there are challenges for Australia's recycling, but that there are also good things happening in the area as well, so it's more balanced. And to demonstrate character, you can also show integrity. So this is a photo where we're walking the talk, basically. We're getting staff out getting involved in cleanup and with Clean Up Australia. And the final C, to show you care, you can demonstrate empathy. And this is one way that we've done that through an Instagram post where we're showing that we have taken the time to ask Australians what are their barriers to recycling and provided them with one of the solutions. Another way to show you care is to demonstrate connection to community, and there's a number of ways that we can do that, whether it's through events. This is one way that we've done it on social media. So here we're not providing a top-down instruction that you should remember your reusable bag. We're showing that connection that, you know, sometimes the community finds it hard to remember their reusable bag, and that these are some of the tips. So just to summarise, trust is critical for effective communication. There is distrust in recycling, but people do want to do the right thing. And keep in mind that that survey was done before the 60 Minutes report. If you're looking to build trust in your community on recycling, maybe focus on the older generations first and communication pathways to that audience. And use the 3 C's of showing character, caring, and comprehensiveness. And finally, I just wanted to use America's Most Trusted Person of 2013, Mr. T. Hanks, to say thanks.